We're using this technology tonight to provide opportunities for continued participation in our decision-making processes while we all do our part to reduce the spread of coronavirus by following current federal and state guidelines that promote social distancing. We want to hear from all who are interested, but as the state's public health agency, we must make public health and safety a priority. We encourage you to help stop the spread of COVID by washing your hands, staying at home when you're sick, covering your coughs and sneezes, and keeping those surfaces clean. Most importantly, we ask that you just stay up to date and stay informed of COVID-19 by visiting our website. That's scdhic.gov/COVID-19. Your participation is so important to us, so we have gone to extensive efforts to ensure that anyone who is interested in engaging with us has the ability to do so. We're continuing to evaluate these tools and accommodations, and we certainly welcome your input on how we may be able to improve your experience with virtual participation. So please give us your thoughts in a feedback survey that will be posted on our webpage after tonight's meeting. We'll try to send a reminder out later also for that feedback survey, and we will be mentioning it later on tonight. Once we get started, or as we get started and go through the meeting, we do encourage you to close other applications that may be running on your computer and turn off other streaming services or devices at your location for the duration of the virtual meeting. All lines have been muted in order to minimize background noise and echoing so that everyone can hear the presenters. After the presentation, we will unmute lines and provide an opportunity for you to ask questions. This virtual meeting is being recorded, and the recording will be placed on our webpage in the next few days. And we have started the recording. Donna Moy will be serving as your facilitator tonight, and I will assist after the presentation with additional instructions for the question and answer portion. Okay, Donna, are you ready? I think we can go ahead and get started if so.
Hello and welcome. My name is Donna Moy. I am the Public Participation Coordinator for DHEC's Bureau of Land and Waste Management in Columbia. I will be facilitating tonight's meeting. It is a pleasure to be here with you. On behalf of DHEC, I would like to thank you for taking the time to join us remotely. We are here tonight because we recognize that the proposed Pineland mine is an important issue in your community. Our purpose for this meeting is to share information with you and answer your questions. Our goal is for you to know that your voice has been heard in our permitting process. The perspective that each of you bring to the conversation tonight is unique, valued, and appreciated. As you know, COVID-19 has impacted the way we all communicate with each other, both personally and professionally. In keeping with our agency's efforts to prevent the spread of COVID-19, we are continuously looking at how we can connect with communities in new and innovative ways while still promoting social distancing and avoiding group gatherings. This virtual meeting was planned with these important points in mind. While the business of our state must continue during this time, DHEC remains committed to listening to your questions and concerns and sharing information with you. We are pleased to have the opportunity to talk with you tonight in this unconventional yet meaningful way. This online platform was chosen because it allows us to have a dialogue with you in a live event setting. The technology is advanced, but it also comes with its own unique challenges. We appreciate your patience and understanding as we work through any issues that may be disruptive. DHEC has created a web page for access to information about the proposed Pineland mine. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the web page along with the presentation that is given tonight. The web page address is www.scdhec.gov/Pineland mine. We will now move on to our agenda for this evening. You should be seeing slide 6 for those of you who are viewing online. We'll start with introductions of DHEC staff who will be addressing your questions tonight. I will call on them individually to introduce themselves so that you will recognize their voices. Their names will also be shown on a slide a little later. We'll begin with Julie Blaylock.
Yes, good evening. This is Julie Blaylock. I'm the Assistant Bureau Chief with the Bureau of Land and Waste Management.
Joe Kuhn.
Good evening, everyone. This is Joe Kuhn. I'm the Mining Program Manager.
Mason Brandeis.
Hey, y'all. This is Mason Brandeis, the Project Manager for this application.
Chris Stout.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Stout. I'm the manager for the Coastal Zone Consistency section.
Brett Caswell.
Hi, I'm Brett Caswell. I'm the MPDS Water Quality Engineer for the project.
Wendy Boswell. Is Wendy unmuted? Okay.
I thought I was. This is Wendy Boswell, Area Director for Charleston and Beaufort.
Thank you. And Jonathan Suma.
Good evening. This is Jonathan Suma, the Regional Mining Inspector.
Thank you, Jonathan. As you can see, we not only travel impacts, we gather impacts as well. So I hope that you understand that the level of participation tonight from DHEC is an effort to make sure that we can address as many questions as possible. So thank you all for being here. An overview of the proposed mine will be given tonight by Mason Brandeis. Following Mason's presentation, our tech host, Laura Boyce, will give instructions on how to participate in the conversation from your remote location. This will include how to use the Q&A board. Laura will then call on those of you who indicated during pre-registration that you would like to speak. Once we conclude with those who pre-registered to speak, we will alternate between those of you joining us by phone and the questions posted on the Q&A board. We understand there are a variety of concerns about the proposed mine. Please remember that the focus of this public meeting is on the mine operating permit decision. A final decision will not be made tonight and will not be based upon how many people say the same thing. There are a few guidelines I will ask you to remember before we get started. First, please be respectful of all who participate tonight. No one voice is more important or carries more weight than another. Second, please only ask one question at a time. We will come back to you if you have more than one. It is important that everyone who wishes to ask a question has an equal opportunity to do so. Third, please do not interrupt a speaker or ask others to respond while you are speaking. Should your comments or actions begin to distract from the intent of this meeting, you may be placed on mute or removed from the online platform. And fourth, please listen to learn the unique perspective that each person brings to the conversation tonight. With that, I will now call on Mason Brandeis to begin our presentation. Mason?
Thanks, Donna. Again, my name is Mason Brandeis, and I am the Project Manager for this application. This is the overview of the proposed Pineland mine in Dorchester County. We will be discussing technical aspects of the application, as well as other aspects of the DHEC process. So tonight's topics, we'll be going over the general information about the site. We'll be discussing the proposed permitted area. We'll be discussing the mine permitting process, the reclamation, and we'll also be discussing the next steps. Here's an aerial photograph of the surrounding area. The yellow line represents the proposed permitted area boundary. The proposed site is located on Sand Ridge Road. My apologies. The proposed site is located along Sand Ridge Road and is located to the south of US Highway 78. Salem Road runs to the east of the site. There are other DHEC permits required in addition to the mining permit prior to operation. Sorry, I was on mute. The Office of Coastal Resource Management has issued a coastal zone consistency determination for this proposed mine. The DHEC also requires mine sites to obtain coverage from our Bureau of Water under the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, or NPDES. This application is currently under review. Two existing general mine operating permits are currently permitted within the larger proposed area. These general permits are limited to 5 acres each to a depth of 20 feet. No processing of material is allowed under these permits. There are 2 NPDES general permits issued on site to address water quality of stormwater and wastewater from the site. Please note that DHEC's approval for general permit coverage does not guarantee that an individual mine operating permit will be issued. Moving on to the mine operating permit application for the proposed Pineland mine. The proposed permitted area is 318 total acres. This includes 62.3 acres of affected area. And within the 62.3 acres, this includes the 2 existing general mine permits. It also includes the 125.9 acres of buffer and the 129.8 acres of future mining reserves. Here's the overall site map. Sorry.
Mason, I was just going to say, if you could get a little bit closer to your microphone, it's a little bit faint. Just want to make sure everyone can hear what you're saying.
Yes, ma'am. I appreciate it.
I apologize for interrupting.
No, you're good. Here's the overall site map for this project. Mining is proposed to take place in 5 segments. Segments 1 and 2, in orange and blue here, represent the general permit areas. Segments 4 and 5 represent areas of expansion upon these general permit areas. Segment 3 represents a new proposed pit area. This area in teal right here represents the wetland buffer, the wetlands, and the perimeter boundary. The areas with yellow border represent future mining reserves. These purple roads here represent haul roads, and their access points from Sand Ridge Road are denoted here and here with these stars. The proposed mining process would begin with clearing of trees and vegetation. It would then lead into topsoil being removed and stockpiled into berms and then vegetated. The pit would then be developed and dewatered as needed. Sand that is mined and loaded onto haul trucks would take place with no further processing. Here's an example of a typical sand mining operation in South Carolina in a comparable coastal setting. Here you can see a rim ditch that's used for sediment and erosion control. You can see an excavation area here along with stockpiles. And along the perimeter, you can see the visual screen and buffer. The mining process would take place no more than 30 feet below the ground surface. The life of mine is expected to be 10 years, and the applicant may request to mine the permitted future reserve areas, which would require additional DHEC approval. In addition to the mining process, DHEC also regulates reclamation. Reclamation is defined as the planned process for restoring the affected land to a useful purpose while protecting natural resource of the surrounding area. A reclamation plan is included in the application. The plan is to reclaim the site to pond and grassland, slope the land, and to use stockpile topsoil to enhance vegetation. A reclamation bond is required to ensure that reclamation is completed. This image shows a reclaimed sand mine that was successfully reclaimed into a pond. Here's our mine permitting timeline. The application was received on September 19th, 2019. On February 27th and March 5th, 2020, a public notice of intent to mine was published in the Post and Courier newspaper. Today is the July 23rd virtual public meeting for this application. And in 15 days, on August 7th, 2020, the public comment period closes. Here are DHEC's next steps. DHEC will review all comments received and make a final decision. DHEC will provide notification of the final decision and a written response to all comments to everyone on our mailing list. As with any DHEC decision, a final decision date begins a 15-day appeal period. To comment, you can contact me, Mason Brandeis, at 2600 Bull Street, Columbia, South Carolina, 29201, or you can email me at brandemd, BRANDEMD, at dhec.sc.gov. More information about this mine, this proposed mine, can be found at www.scdhec.gov/Pineland Mine. If there are any questions or comments, here is my contact info along with the contact info of the local contact, John Suma. This concludes my technical overview, and I'll hand it back to Donna. Thank you.
Thank you, Mason. Laura will now explain how to participate from your remote location and begin calling on those of you who pre-registered to speak. Laura?
Great, thanks Donna and Mason. As Donna noted earlier, it is so important that we hear from you in the time we have tonight. So a few guidelines to help us. As just a reminder, we are recording this meeting as both a resource to our team, but also as a way to share this meeting with those who may not be able to join us tonight. A copy of it will be made available on our website soon. We may need to mute your line if there is extra background noise so that we can ensure that everyone is able to hear. And in the interest of time, we will ask that you do limit your questions to one at a time so that we can make sure we're getting an opportunity to hear from everyone. There are two ways to ask questions or to request to speak, and we will be turning those features on shortly. For those of you who are joining through your computer, a Q&A board will be turned on shortly, and it will look like this. So you see that on your screen. You can type in your question on the board, and Donna will be reading off the questions for our staff to answer. Once we turn that Q&A board on, your screen will show two tabs at the bottom. If you want to get back to the slides that are being presented, just click on the tab that says Presentation or Content Stage. Additionally, you can ask a question verbally using the unmute function to indicate that you would like to speak. You may unmute your line once we unlock the muting functions by clicking the microphone on your screen or by using *6 on your phone. I will call on your name or the last 4 digits of the phone number that you're calling from when it's your turn to speak. If we experience any background noise, we may need to mute all lines. If you have additional questions, once you do ask your question, please unmute your line again and wait for one of us to call on you. Again, when it's your turn to speak, please state your name clearly. We'll now unlock the lines so that all who want to speak will be able to unmute themselves. Again, if you're having trouble participating online, you can join via phone. The call-in number and access code is on the screen and the web page, and it's also in the email that was sent out. So again, unmute your line by using the microphone icon or *6 on your phone. Our tech team is noting the lines that are being unmuted and will call on you to speak. We will also turn on the Q&A board at this time as well. Again, to get back to the slides, click that presentation tab, or it might say content stage. All right. Donna, we do have a few people that indicated in their registration that they would like to ask some questions. So if you'd like, we could start with those who already indicated they have some questions, and maybe we will be able to get some questions posted on the Q&A board and have some folks unmute their lines indicating they would like to speak.
Okay, that sounds great. And I do see that we had quite a few people who had signed up to speak, so we will begin with those.
Okay.
And I know that it may be, y'all have to forgive us if we butcher names. We do try to pronounce them as best we can, but if we get it wrong, please feel free to correct us whenever you start speaking. So we want to begin with Steve Gilbert. Is Mr. Gilbert on the line? Okay. Mr. Gilbert, if you are on the line and having trouble connecting, please remember that you can call in to join us. We are going to move on down the list now, but we'll come back to you. So next we have Norma Thrower, and then after Miss Norma, we would have Terry Taylor. So Miss Norma Thrower, are you on the line with us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can. Please go ahead.
I had some questions about when they do go in and they do the sand mining. What recourse do we have if we have damages to, say, the wells, our septic tank, or something? I know that down the road just a little ways, there is another sand mine, and the lady that lives next door, she had problems with her foundation, her floor splitting, and it was due to this sand mine. That's the only logical reason for it. So what recourse do we have when they come in here and they do? This is such a large area that they're going to be doing, in my opinion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thrower, for that question. That's a good way to get us started off, and I will pass it to Joe Kuhn to address that issue. It is one that we hear quite often throughout the state, so I'm glad you asked it. So, Joe, would you like to answer Ms. Thrower's question?
Sure, Donna, thank you. And thank you, Ms. Thrower, for asking the question. And recourse-wise, before I get to there, what I would like for you to encourage all of you that are on the phone tonight, when we have mines that dewater, if you are concerned about your well or your septic, if you could reach out to Mason and provide as much information as you know about that. If you know how deep your well is, where your well is located, where your septic is located, so we could document that per a comment. That's great information to have in case there were any issues that came forward through the operation of the mine. Our permit will be written in a way that requires the operator, if say you had a well problem, and we would be responsible for determining that that problem was caused by the operation. So again, that's why it's valuable to know as much information as we can about the depth of the well and those types of things. Not only will it help in that situation, but it would help possibly in shaping our permit as well. So that's a written condition, common condition where dewatering occurs in a mine permit. There's also a condition that requires the operator to resolve that issue if DHEC determines that they caused it. And really, any issue that you would have that you feel like the mine operation is causing, you certainly have the recourse to reach out to DHEC, to John Suman in Charleston, to Mason Brandeis here in Columbia, or myself, and we'll certainly investigate any issue that could possibly be tied to the operation and take appropriate action.
Okay.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Thrower, if you had another question, you'll have the ability to raise your hand a little later. So thank you for that. So next I had Terry Taylor.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Hi. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. Please go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. I have multiple concerns about this facility having been allowed without us having a say in the very beginning when this very first began. A lot of people, as you well know, don't get the newspaper anymore. So I feel like a sign should have been posted where the neighborhood could have seen it, but that's neither here nor there. One of my biggest concerns, there are two things. One is the property value of my home and how having this mine within a close proximity of my home devalues the property of my home. The second thing that seriously concerns me is the amount of traffic that's being brought up and down our small, quiet, rural roads. The whole purpose for my moving to the country was to have and enjoy a peaceful lifestyle, that of which has been stolen from us by having the zillions of trucks that are flying up and down our very small, quiet neighborhood streets and destroying our peace as well as our roads.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Taylor.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
So I heard questions about the way that this meeting was advertised, property values going down in regards to your home, and the truck traffic that your community may experience if this mine is approved. So I will again go to Joe to address those three items.
Sure. Thank you, Donna, and thank you, Ms. Taylor, for bringing those concerns to light. So I'll go back to your newspaper and your sign suggestion. I would also encourage you to put that in writing to us if you haven't already. The newspaper is likely becoming possibly an antiquated way to put public notices out to communities, and suggestions such as that are valuable to us, and certainly we would consider if we ever were to change our regulatory requirements or statutory requirements to adjust how we do place notice to better reach the community, because that is our goal. Property value and truck traffic are concerns that we often hear when we review mine applications and engage the community. Those issues would be best served and brought to the county administrator, the zoning department in Dorchester County. And if there are concerns about where mines are located in the county or the density of mining in certain areas, that is great information to take to your Dorchester County contacts to see if they would consider adjusting the zoning in your area and to try to alleviate those types of concerns. As far as our permitting process goes, we look at the mine footprint once you enter from the road, and that permitted area is what we have jurisdiction over. And so we're looking at the actual mining distance from the road and the mining activity that could possibly compromise the road in that nature. Controlling truck traffic, what types of vehicles and how many vehicles travel on a public road is beyond our jurisdiction. So again, I would encourage you to take those types of issues to the county and to any municipality that may be involved.
Thank you, Joe. I did want to mention that we do see that there are several questions coming in on the Q&A board. We are going to go ahead and get through those who pre-registered to speak with us, and then after that we are going to go to alternating between the questions on the Q&A board as well as those of you who will be calling in. So I would like to go back for a minute to see if Mr. Steve Gilbert has been able to join us. Okay. We will come back to him again then. So the next person that we have is David. I think it's Provenzano. So Mr. Provenzano, if you could get ready to speak, and then after you, we will hear from Jeff Hughes.
Yes, this is David Provenzano. Thank you very much. I had several questions and comments after reviewing the permit. I don't expect the mine operating permit not to be approved. We obviously, as a community, have a lot of questions and concerns due to the nature and size of the mine. This is probably one of the largest mining operations in our area and one of the deepest. I've got several questions and comments I'd like to make. During the zoning process for this mine, the operators of the mine indicated that they would be operating at hours that were favorable to the community, but I understand that those kinds of things can be added to the mine permit to kind of lock those hours in. We currently have mining trucks operating in the area early in the morning and late at night, and the presenters of the mine for the zoning indicated that they wouldn't be doing that, or they presented hours that everybody laughed at. So I want to make sure that we'd like to get those hours, operating hours, in writing as part of the permit. That was one. I've asked a question on the board, and I'm concerned about fueling operations for the mining equipment, not the haul trucks, but the mining equipment itself. Will fuel be stored within the mining operation area, and will fueling of the equipment in the mine be allowed, the dredges and the whatever other equipment is used to dig the sand and load the trucks? And if so, how is that process being monitored for spill prevention, especially considering the depth of the mine and the proximity to wetlands and waterways? What else? Under the reclamation section of the reclamation plan, there were comments in there about revegetating naturally. Due to the size and the length of time, my preference would be if they could seed rather than let invasive or wild species repopulate the bermed areas or the sloped areas of the mine itself. And one of my biggest questions related to mining around wetlands. I've looked at several of the mines in the area, and most of them have a token percentage of mine to wetland face. This one has a significant band of wetlands running through the mine area. My concern is that if you mine both sides of the wetland, that makes it high ground, which makes it not wetland anymore, effectively destroying the wetlands. I would like a review of how that mining adjacent to the wetland buffer zones is going to affect those wetlands in the future. And I think that's all I have written down right now.
Thank you, Mr. Provenzano. Is that correct?
That is correct. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. You asked several questions in there, and I know all of them are important, but I do want to ask Joe to touch on the question about the wetlands and the reclamation. We may need to come back to the refueling and the operating hours. So, Joe, can you address the wetland questions?
Sure. So as you pointed out, and I'm going to take over as presenter here and try to get back to that presentation just to help facilitate the discussion.
While Joe is doing that, if everyone could click on the presentation tab, you'll be able to see the slide he's going to be talking from.
Get back to that map we have here and get this, let's see, oop, just bear with me here. Okay, here we go. So, Mr. Provenzano, I believe, the wetlands, these are buffer and wetlands, so they may not delineate the full wetland, but there are wetlands within this area. As you may know, off in this direction, in this way is Four Hole Swamp, and I think there's like a halfway gut creek that runs off in this direction. So in general, these wetlands are flowing in this direction. And, in order for wetlands to be jurisdictional, as they've been delineated as such and determined to be as such by the Corps of Engineers, they're connected to the surface water, and so they do flow, or they do assist in the flow and recharge of the surface water. And so wetland buffers are typically a minimum of 50 foot, and so this buffer that they've designated here would be at a minimum of 50 foot from the wetland. And then again, they've left some reserves additionally between those buffer areas and where they're proposing to mine in these areas. And as Mason mentioned, they have already received approval for 2 5-acre areas here in Area 1 and over here in Area 2. And so they would initiate mining there and then go into these other areas. And then certainly if they were to get approval for what they've proposed, they would mine in the 62-acre areas that consist of those segments 1 through 5. And then they would have to come to us for requests to go any further than that. And mining is a slow process. And so the impact to those wetlands, as long as the mining remains shallow and the dewatering is slow and normal rainfall is had during that mining time frame, we don't have any indication that there is impact directly to those wetlands from mining adjacent to it. And so we've seen wetlands being maintained adjacent to active mine areas in our state, and those buffers are set at 50 foot in our general permit, and in our individual permit we usually have a minimum of 50 foot. So, I mean, that's generally was your question. You'd be concerned about the vitality of the wetland. Again, I think at a glance, that's something we'll look at as we inspect the site. That's something Mr. John Suma is familiar with looking at as he goes out and inspects those areas, and we'll certainly monitor that as mining progresses. And then the reclamation plan you mentioned mentions revegetating naturally. I will say that DNR typically suggests that native warm season grasses are used for reclamation. We'll certainly take a look at what they propose in the reclamation plan and what DNR has recommended, and we'll certainly also take your recommendation under consideration as far as requiring them to use, permanent stabilization measures and appropriate grass for their reclamation.
Yeah, Roger, I appreciate that. Just put a couple of points of clarification. The reserves are included in the mine application, correct?
They are.
And the only difference between them mining the reserves over the next 10 years is getting your DHEX approval for mining those reserves.
That's correct.
They don't need to go through another permit process, so that all of that is actually included in the mine permit.
They would go through a permit modification request.
Yeah, okay. The reclamation, the way I read the reclamation information is that they intend to let the berms and the graded areas seed naturally. So I appreciate you guys taking a second look at that.
Certainly. And I'd be glad to go ahead and answer the rest of the question, but if Donna wants to save that for later, I'll let her facilitate that.
No, that's fine. I would like to ask Mr. Provenzano, I know that you mentioned about the hours that the applicant had already indicated that they would be operating. What were those hours before Joe gets to answering that question?
I can try and pull those down. They were in the minutes of the Dorchester County Zoning Board meeting, and I will have to go pull those back down.
Okay. Then go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I'd like to, once you get that information, please submit that to us in writing, and we'll certainly make sure the applicants, one of the members on the phone here is the applicant representative, and their consultants are here, so they're hearing your comments, and we'll certainly discuss that with them. We don't specifically have in our regulatory terms and conditions, that's not specifically stated as something that we can necessarily impose on them. But sometimes, if it's consistent with the zoning and they've already agreed to do it per the zoning, then they may be agreeable to also placing that condition as a condition of their permit. Right. So we'll certainly have that discussion. And then fueling operations, yes, they can conduct fueling operations within the mine area. That is something that we do inspect. It's on our inspection form, and all of our inspectors are routinely take a look at that. We make sure that they're double-walled tanks, or that there's some kind of secondary containment in place for those fuel areas, and we'll inspect the soil around them to make sure that we're not seeing any spillage of fuel or oil in those maintenance areas. And there's a clause in the part of the MPDES permit requirements. There's a spill prevention countermeasure plan and a SWIP that is required that addresses that they have absorbent materials to utilize in case there is some incidental spillage of those fuel areas, so that it doesn't get into the soil or get into the water. And I believe you did also mention the depth of the mine. That's a little deeper than what you commonly see, and I will say that the general permit areas are limited to 20-foot depth. And they have indicated to Mason and I that they don't intend to mine the whole area to 30 foot, but they'd like to have that flexibility to, a lot of times the material that is mined, certain types of clay content, sand size that's preferable to others, and if they have the ability to at least chase that to that depth in areas, but overall they'd like to maintain a overall probably average a shallower depth. So.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
So now I believe I understand that Mr. Gilbert has joined us. Mr. Gilbert, if you can unmute your line, you are free to ask your question.
That would be *6 on your phone, or the microphone icon on your computer screen. You look unmuted now, Mr. Gilbert. Go ahead and start your question. It appears we're not hearing you. If you can, try calling into the meeting using the phone number and access code that is on the screen, and we would be glad to hear your question and get that answered. Donna, if we can, maybe let's make sure we get to some of the others that have already pre-registered, and we'll try to get back to Mr. Gilbert if he can call in.
Okay. So
I see Ms. Leslie Linhart has pre-registered and indicated she had a question. Ms. Linhart, are you on the line? It appears that you are unmuted, and you may ask your question. We're not hearing you, Ms. Linhart. We might need to ask you to call in also and use your telephone for the audio. We'll give you a few minutes to do that. The call-in number is on the screen now, and the access code. It's also on our webpage, which is scdhec.gov/Pineland You can type in questions on the Q&A board, and we will start reading those off very shortly. We do have several on there. Donna, there is at least one other person that has pre-registered that I want to make sure we have an opportunity to get to. We have a Miss Riley Egger.
Yes, howdy. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Great. Go ahead, Riley.
Alrighty. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Riley Egger. I am the Land, Water, and Wildlife Project Manager at the Coastal Conservation League. The Conservation League works with the mission of protecting the natural landscapes, abundant wildlife, clean water, and quality of life of all residents in South Carolina. First off, I want to extend my gratitude to everyone at DHEC from the mining and the public engagement sectors that have worked to pull this public meeting together during these really trying times. I'm really thankful for your efforts and for the opportunity to provide further comment on the Pineland mine permit application, in addition to the concerns raised in the letter sent by Skelp on March 20th on behalf of the Conservation League, as well as the Audubon Society and SC Wildlife Federation. So we know Dorchester County is no stranger to sand mines. They have over 20 sand mines in or near the 29437 zip code, where the Pineland mine would be located. EPA's ECHO online database provides enforcement and compliant history for registered facilities, including mine facilities that require a discharge permit. According to ECHO, there are 5 mines in the surrounding area that have been in repeated significant violation of their discharge permit for at least the past 3 years. These surrounding operations have failed to produce the required DMR or discharge monitoring reports, and this means that the agency and the public really have no idea or assurances that dewatering activities from mining operations are in compliance with state water quality standards and not adversely impacting the water and wildlife in the area. All of these mines that are shown to be in violation are listed as releasing discharge onto on-site wetlands that drain via tributaries and lead to 4-hole swamp. And the Pineland mine proposes a similar discharge method. This is a pattern that really threatens the health of the surrounding environment as well as the character of the community and landscape. And I believe that DHEC has an opportunity to be proactive to address this concerning trend by imposing a condition on the Pineland mine that would revoke their mining permit if they are found to be in repeated significant violation of their discharge permit, like others have been in the area. The Pineland mine would also only be 2.6 miles from Four Hole Swamp. And as noted earlier, any discharge from dewatering activities would ultimately end up there. Four Hole Swamp is just one of 2 old-growth cypress tupelo swamp forests in South Carolina. And there's, throughout the years, multiple federal, state, and NGO nonprofits has pursued its protection. So any discharge into wetlands drained by a tributary of Four Hole Swamp should receive the most intense scrutiny and careful consideration. Quality of life of Dorchester County residents is also a top priority that should be considered and addressed. The special exemption request by Sandridge Road Holdings to conduct mineral resource extraction on this site went before the BZA in October of last year. And at that meeting, there were over 10 residents that were standing in opposition and expressing concerns that the sand mine would have on their personal safety, traffic congestion, property values, and future economic growth as they had seen impacts from other sand mines in the area. Mining operations inevitably disrupt the character of a community. More often than not, they are located in small rural communities, and the Pineland mine would be as well. And operations can be a major disruption to daily life. So in a show of respect to the community in which the operator would be located in, I want to ask that Sandridge Road Holdings works with the residents to condition their permit to include reasonable restrictions on things like the hours of operation to occur during normal working hours, weekdays from 9 to 5, and as well as condition that would limit the volume of truck traffic to no more than 100 trucks a day, which is the medium average estimate for this site according to the special exemption request submitted. Safety risks for mining operations that occur outside the permit boundary are also important to take into account. It has been raised that previous mining operations in the area have created safety risks as a result of the truck traffic and the trucking speeds. And I would want to ask that Sandridge Holdings considers this risk to the community and possibly install a radar enforced speed camera on Sandridge Road in an effort to reduce the impact the operation would have on the quality of life of residents and to maintain their safety. Imposing reasonable conditions and restrictions on this permit, such as the ones I just discussed, as well as in our letter, are really needed to protect the environmental integrity and help maintain the quality of life of those nearby. Thank you so much for your time and for pulling this together and for allowing me the opportunity to give comment, and I'm happy to discuss further at any time.
Thank you, Riley. We certainly do appreciate the conversations that we have been having with you on behalf of the all environmental sites in the coastal areas, and we certainly welcome the opportunity to continue those conversations with you, and we appreciate you being a part of the meeting tonight.
This is Steve Gilbert. I hope you can hear me now.
We can hear you.
Great. Okay, it took a while.
Sorry about that. Please go ahead.
No, that's fine. I think Riley covered most of what I was going to say as well. A few other points I'd like to bring out, and one concern is the depth of maximum depth of mining. 30 feet is really kind of exorbitant. We've got a water table that starts about 8 to 10 feet below the surface, and the concern is, with all the wetlands on site, we really don't want to be affecting them with mining that deep at 30 feet. I would recommend that 20 feet probably should be the maximum depth to maintain the water table high enough so that local soils and wetlands aren't affected by it. The other thing is the size of the sediment basin for capturing some of these waters is on about 0.3 acres, and that's the only one that we saw dedicated on the permit application, and that may not be adequate to ensure that site runoff doesn't have a lot of sediments and potential pollutants in it that enter the waterways. And again, as Riley said, it's not that far from Four Hole Swamp, and we want to make sure that happens. I guess the other thing is just the buffer zones we believe should be planted with appropriate vegetation rather than just left to be on their own. We recommend that they use very shallow slopes on the areas of the site. I don't know if there's any full reclamation plan or what, but the shallower the slopes, the more emergent vegetation and other transitional wetland species can occupy the area and be of use to wildlife. I think most of the rest of it was covered by Riley, and I think that will do for my input tonight. Thank you very much for holding this hearing. We really appreciate it. And I am speaking on behalf of the South Carolina Wildlife Federation, which has also joined Coastal Conservation League in other situations like this. And again, we appreciate DHEC listening to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. Laura, do you want to continue on with our?
This is Leslie Linhart. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Linhart. I was getting ready to call on you. Perfect.
I am sorry. I'm sorry. It was definitely user error on this end. But I appreciate. I just want to, as Steve just said, we all very much appreciate the effort that y'all have put into organizing this meeting. I know it's not easy. Everyone is adjusting and pivoting in this day and age, and so the fact that all of y'all are on the line and paying attention to our concerns is very much appreciated. I am with the South Carolina Environmental Law Project, and as Riley mentioned, we had provided comments back in March on behalf of the League and Audubon, South Carolina, and the Wildlife Federation, as Steve had said. And I'm not going to go through those comments. I just would, direct y'all's attention to those and would appreciate your consideration of those comments that we submitted. One question, though, that I would like to raise is the jurisdictional wetland question, which obviously is ultimately a core question. But there was a discrepancy between when the applicant submitted their preliminary jurisdictional request. I guess it was for 256 acres. And the application covers 318, and so I think there were currently, or there were about 68 estimated federally jurisdictional wetlands on the site. We would like to know if the applicants addressed that already. How is the agency approaching that? We want to make sure that there are not going to be a significant number of wetlands that fall through the cracks. So that is my question, and thanks again so much for hearing us.
Thank you, Ms. Linhart, and thank you so much for sticking in there and continuing to try to join us. I'm glad that you finally were able to get online and that we were able to hear your comments and your question. Joe, can you address the jurisdictional wetland question that Ms. Linhart raised?
Yes, I'd be glad to, and I'd also like to echo Donna's appreciation for Ms. Linhart and Ms. Riley and Mr. Gilbert for bringing well-informed comments to us this evening and for our consideration. I've certainly read through your letter, Ms. Linhart, and we will certainly strongly consider your comments along with everyone else's. So the wetland question, there were actually two jurisdictional determinations done. One on October 3rd for 62.8 acres, and one on October 22nd for the remaining acreage there, 256 acres. So, you know, those summed together are the 318 acres that are the permitted area. So the entire permitted area has been delineated, and they have those appropriate jurisdictional determinations in place.
Thank you,
Great.
Jeff.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Laura, do we have any others who have pre-registered to speak?
There were a few that indicated they weren't sure at the time, and we can ask them if they would like to speak. We have Mr. Ryan Wenzel. And that's okay. If he wants to speak, he can. If not, that's fine too. If you do want to, please unmute your line and we'll be glad to hear your question.
This is Ryan Wenzel. I'm here.
Hey, Mr. Wenzel, thanks for joining us.
Hi, I appreciate this meeting. I'm here representing the applicant, and when I put that down, I was, you know, we're willing to speak on behalf of the applicant if needed, but I really have no comment. We just, as everybody's echoed, we appreciate y'all holding this meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Wenzel, and we certainly do appreciate that you have taken the time to join this meeting tonight and to hear the concerns of the local community. I know that they appreciate it as well, that you are concerned to be here tonight and to make sure that you understand what those concerns are. So thank you for joining us.
We also have Father John that signed up to register and indicated that he may be interested in posing some questions. Father John, are you on the line? *6 on your phone or the microphone icon on your computer screen will unmute you. Donna, it may be best if we could go to the Q&A board and start reading through some of those. We may have already gotten to some, but there are several on there that I know we want to make sure we have time to get to. We'll circle back to Father John, and if he ends up joining us, we'll make sure we get his question too.
Okay, that sounds great. So, Mr. Provenzano, I believe that you were very active with your questions in the beginning, and I know that we have answered some of them. So I'm going to quickly read through them to see what maybe we did not address already. I think one of your questions was how is discharge water acidity going to be monitored per the permit? How will this information be available to the public? And what ways are allowed to correct the pH? So I'm not sure if that question is maybe best for Brett Caswell.
I'm here, ready to go.
Okay.
So yes, I'm Brett Caswell. I'm write the MPDS general permit coverage for this site. And yes, pH is definitely a pollutant of concern that we monitor. With the way that's monitored is they do submit the monthly DMRs, whether they have a discharge from the site or not. If they don't, they simply submit no discharge, and they send that in. Otherwise, they need to complete the form out. The range for this particular site is anywhere between 6 and 8.5 standard units. The information is available to the public through FOI. It can be easily accessed. We keep all of the DMR data. You can easily get that. Whatever ways are allowed to correct pH, there are some common methods that people use, such as maybe lime, or they may have some sodium hydroxide, something like that. But whatever it is, we would like to have that approved before they do need to do that. Many cases they don't need to do that, but there are some cases that they do. And so usually what would happen is we would get that information from them and make sure that what they propose would actually bring the pH back into the range, the desired range, if that makes sense.
It does. Thank you very much. And I think this goes to the enforcement of their discharge permit and those kinds of things as well. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Laura, did you have anybody else that has indicated they would like to ask a question?
Not at this time, no.
Okay.
This is Steve Gilbert. I have one quick question for you, and that is this meeting is being recorded. Is there a way to retrieve the recording if someone else wanted to listen to it?
Yes, Mr. Gilbert, we will be having the recording available on our webpage probably in the next couple of days. It takes a little bit of time for us to get it downloaded and uploaded back to the page. So we will have it posted, if not tomorrow, it will be early next week. And we will likely send an email out to everyone that's on our mailing list to let them know when that recording is available.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Okay. I will move on then on the Q&A board with another question by Mr. Provenzano. I'm going to have it before the end of the meeting. And that question is, rumor has it that the house at the top of the property on 203 Railway will be used as a mining business office or work area. This change in zoning use has not been passed through the zoning board and is a concern. Is the rumor true? So, Joe, I know that you can't address rumors, but maybe you could address whether or not that property at 203 Railway was included in the application.
Yes, I was just poking around to try to figure out where 203 Railway was. I don't have any information to share in that regard. We can certainly make note of that, unless Mason is aware of it or the applicant group there is aware of that. I'm not.
Mr. Wenzel,
Yeah,
I don't.
heard. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Mason. I think that was that you haven't heard about that either. And Mr. Wenzel, we don't want to put you on the spot, but if you have an answer to that question, we will be glad to give you an opportunity to provide it.
I'm here. There's been no decision made on that. There's nothing planned for that. And if there is anything, they're going to have to go through Dorchester County to get that approved. But no, there's been no decision on that.
Okay. Thank you so much for that answer. Laura, I will continue on unless you have somebody else who has indicated they would like to speak.
At this time, I don't see anyone else unmuted, so continuing with the Q&A board would sound great.
Okay. Mr. Provenzano also asked that currently haul trucks spill sand from their truck onto public roads, most often near the mine access roads. Will the mine be responsible for cleanup?
Yes, I can handle that question. This is Joe. There is a condition in their permit that they clean up any track out, is how we phrase that. So if this is immediately in front of one of their access points, and if we observe that while we're at a mine inspection, or if a community member brings that to our attention, we'll certainly reach directly to the operator and have them maintain that area. And John Suma can certainly speak to that. It's something he might deal with from time to time, and typically, if we need to approach them, operators are responsive to that. So please, if you see that, and you can see it in front of an active mine, please give myself a call, give Mr. Suma a call, and let us know.
Okay, thank you, Joe. So I would like to give John a minute to just talk a little bit about what he does in his role there in our local office in Charleston. Some of you may not be aware of what they do on a daily basis and how they respond to local questions. So John, if you can just talk a little bit about that, not necessarily with just the sand, but with any concerns that are called into your office.
Yeah, sure, definitely. So in our region, we cover Charleston, Dorchester, and Berkeley County. We have 2 inspectors in our office currently, which is more than we've had in the past. In the past, we've typically just had 1. But we cover, our area is pretty big. We have over about 100 mine sites. That's anything from, little small mines that are, 5 acres or less, all the way up to big quarries. So we have a lot of food on our plate, as you would say. So our normal day is we have our set schedule of what we do. We try to pick out some different mines. We try to kind of stay in one area so we can try to be as efficient as possible for what we do. But the specifics of mine is when we pick a specific mine to do an inspection, we do call the operator. That's one of our requirements that we have. That's given to us by MSHA, which is the mining industry's version of OSHA for on-site safety. So we do a notification. Usually that's as I'm pulling up to the front entrance. Once we do that, I'm mainly looking at the specifications of the permit, where they're mining at. I want to make sure that they're mining in the specific area that they're permitted to and not mining outside of that, making sure they're not mining within buffers or anything like that, or wetlands. I'm looking at the depth that they're mining at, and then the majority of the rest of the inspection is looking at their BMPs. So I'm looking at their fuel stations. I'm looking at any sort of dust issues, any sort of track out issues. Also, I'm not the stormwater inspector. That's a specific inspector that also does inspections, but I also look at that as well, just in case there's any sort of issues. I can try to get that addressed in time and manner. And the last thing is we try to kind of look to the future when it comes to these mine sites. So they're mining, but we're also looking at making sure that they're starting those reclamation activities as soon as possible. So when they're done mining, it's just not sitting there and being inactive. We try to push that forward to where they can do reclamation and return it to a piece of land that's that has use. That's all I have.
Thank you, John. And I wanted to give anyone the opportunity that may have some questions about anything that John just mentioned. We certainly want you to have an opportunity to talk with our local staff and to know their faces in case you need them in the future. So did anyone have a question from a local aspect that John might could answer? Anything that he addressed? Okay. Well, if you think of something, please either put it in on the Q&A board or let us know that you would like to ask that question, and we'll certainly get John back up to answer those for you. So we can continue on with the board. Laura, do we have anybody that has called in?
Not at this time, Donna.
Okay. So we are still getting many questions on the Q&A board. Thank you for putting those there. I'm going to continue on reading them. And the next one is a good question. I will preface it by saying that the mine applicants or the consultants are on the line. They are hearing your concerns. This meeting has been planned for you to be able to talk directly with DHEC. We certainly welcome the applicant's input, but this next question, I think I will get Joe to answer in terms of the buffer areas. And the question was, once they're through cutting all of the trees, then they just move on and let nature take its course. These trees have taken years to grow, and don't you think you should put back that of which you cut down? Not all of them, of course, but replant tree seedings. So, Joe, I'm not sure from DHEC's perspective how much of that you might could address.
Yeah, I took back over the presentation, and I'm getting back to that map to facilitate discussion again. And so what I will say to that is that these areas that are designated to be mined are largely already in pasture land, it appears, some sort of ag land. Trees have already been cleared. And even I believe that's true for this area as well, even though I can't quite determine that. But as you'll see, at least in this photo, many of these trees are standing. And just on my other personal screen, yeah, that more or less looks consistent. Well, actually, it looks like in the more recent aerial photographs that I'm seeing on Google Earth that maybe this timber's already been harvested and replanted in that area, in those areas here in the reserves. But certainly in these buffer areas, we would encourage the trees to remain. They actually are required to remain per the permit and even be enhanced as needed to improve visual screen and assist with visual screen and noise buffering and things of that nature. So that's something that we will continue to take your comments into consideration, and as we develop a draft permit, if that's the direction we go, we'll take that into consideration. I don't know if the applicant, operator, representative on the line could speak to these reserve areas, but again, just looking at the photography, it looks like they have been replanted, and that is typical of our mine sites. You know, some mine sites locate in large timber tracts, and it's actually, we're seeing more and more of large companies, timber management companies, incorporate mining as part of their land management plans to enhance and improve their property for wildlife and for other uses, hunting and recreating and wildlife management, and incorporated in their management of their timber harvesting and kind of rotating through those different land uses. So that's what I would say there. I don't know if anybody else has anything to add.
Okay. Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
So I see, Ms. Linhart, I believe this was an earlier message that you typed, but that you were having trouble getting your speaker unmuted. Just wanted to make sure that you did not have another question that you wanted to ask right now. All right. If you do, then please just unmute your line, and we'll be glad to bring you back into the discussion. Thank you, Mr. Provenzano, for including the link for us concerning the question about the hours of operation. You have stated that Robert Strange, the applicant's environmental consultant, explained the mining plan included proposed hours of operation are weekdays 6 a.m. to 5 p.m., some Saturdays 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. And you concluded that with you would like to see those hours be included in the permit as a condition. So I believe Joe addressed that earlier, and we certainly do appreciate you pulling up that information for us so that it can be noted. You also, Mr. Provenzano, asked a question about the permit depth of mining to be limited to 20 feet versus the 30 feet. I believe Mr. Gilbert raised that issue a little bit earlier as well. Joe, do you want to touch on that a little bit about what is being proposed and what your experience has been with the depths of mines?
Sure, Donna. we certainly have heard the comment and seen the concern by Mr. Provenzano, and also the Scalp letter has brought that out as a concern, that depth of mining. And as I stated in discussions with the application, they're looking for some flexibility, but we can certainly continue those discussions with them and talk through that a little more. And I would also like to suggest again that if there's any information out there that anybody has in the community in regards to their depth of wells, we will also go through our DHEC database and find out what information we have as far as well records on file, and learn more about that, and propose a depth appropriate if needed, and suggest that we adjust that depth if needed. So again, we're in that technical review phase. We're taking comments under consideration, and we'll certainly consider that concern.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. And the next question was also posted by Mr. Provenzano, stating that if the recording of this meeting is delayed until next week, will DHEC extend the comment period? Would you like to address that?
Sure, I'll address that. We set the comment period typically 10 to 15 days after we have such a community event, and then we take these comments and concerns into consideration. But I understand that you all may want to review what was said this evening and address and use that to shape your comments. I will say that we, even though we may set of end of comment period, if we receive comments after that period and we're still reviewing towards a decision, we'll still take those comments into consideration. August 7th falls on a Friday, we certainly aren't going to close the comment period and make a permit decision on August 7th. We have some due diligence time period, and we have some time to process these comments and work through a discussion with the applicant and work towards a permit decision. So if comments lag behind a few days because of that, please know that they will be considered as part of that, as part of our decision-making process. We do need to have an end of comment period. We can't just let it go open-ended per se. So that's where I'd like to be with that question now, if that is satisfactory.
Yeah, that's fine. It sounded like there was a delay. There might be a delay in getting the recording posted. And I know some people wanted to review that or forward the recording to other people for review. Just want to make sure we had ample time to get our comments in. Thanks.
Certainly, and I would suggest that if there are folks that know they might, miss that date and need a little more time, just make sure and communicate that to us, to Mason, and we'll certainly, again, consider those comments.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
Laura, do you have anyone else who is calling in and would like to speak?
Not at this time, Donna.
Okay. I'm glad to see that our Q&A board is being utilized. And I'm even more glad to know that that all of you who are listening tonight are interested in hearing the recording of the meeting. That was very important for us to be able to offer that for those who aren't able to join us tonight. So we do encourage you to share that with others that you know who maybe could not be available tonight to participate. Let them know that that recording is going to be there so that they can listen to the conversation as well. So I had another question by Ms. Taylor, and I was trying to reference back. You clarified that 203 is right on the corner of Railway and Sandridge. And Joe, I remember that you were having a little bit of trouble finding that on the map. but I believe that was a question pertaining to the zoning and whether or not there was going to be a business office in that area. So, Ms. Taylor, we appreciate you giving us that exact information about where that is, the address that you provided. We also have a question. Joe, can the permit be extended beyond 10 years?
Yes. So the permit, we issue life of mine permits. And so they really don't have a hard expiration date per se. They are tied to the reclamation plan and schedule. And so part of our review process as we go through the years inspecting the mine and communicating with the operator is if we see that schedule is reaching its end, we'll communicate that and get that schedule updated as needed. You know, life of mine is a conceptual estimate per se. So they estimate that they'll mine through this in 10 years, but mining activity is dependent on the market and the economy, so it can be adjusted, and so that's how our permits are managed. They require an annual fee and an annual report, and they kind of document how much they've mined the previous year and how much they plan to mine the next year and kind of how much they've mined to date. And again, as part of what we do in communicating with our regional inspectors, we keep tabs on that and see how they're doing according to the reclamation schedule. But yes, it can be extended.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. And Ms. Taylor, I see that you have reiterated your concerns about your well water. I'm assuming that you are on a private well, and the possibility of that well water being contaminated and any adverse effects that the mining will have on wildlife of the area. So, Joe, maybe you could touch a little bit on contamination from mining operations with private wells, and maybe reiterate the information that you shared at the beginning of the meeting concerning you know, the information that can be submitted to us about private wells.
Sure. I'll reiterate that if we were to have this in person, and we certainly can mail this out to landowners, but again, it's a simple form that we sometimes use in an in-person setting where we'll have an opportunity for folks to fill out a well form and give us information about what they know about their well. The diameter of the well, the depth of the well, and all that sort of thing, and that's just great information for us to know, and really, you know, process the application. So, you know, if you have that information, share it with us. As far as contamination goes, mining of this nature is really an inert process. You know, it's more or less it's a large lake development, no different than somebody excavating a pond on their land. So certainly there is machinery involved in that, trucks coming to the site and leaving the site, and we discussed the fueling. You know, we take a look at that as part of our inspection process to make sure that there's no incidental spillage. And so that would be a potential source of contamination, but in practice what we see is that being incidental in nature. You know, there's nothing else introduced into the environment besides that potential. And so contamination is sometimes used synonymous with, you know, sedimentation or total suspended solids or turbidity in water in the discharge. I do acknowledge that has been brought to our attention today, and there's a process for monitoring that. But as far as like that type of activity below ground, in between an open mine area and somebody's well, All that area is, got sand in it, and, that sand typically is a great filter for water. And if anything, when you open the ground to mine, you draw that water towards the mine. So, the possibility of any of that moving in that direction and sediment being entrained in it is not something that we would typically think would happen. So I wouldn't think there would be any danger of contaminants to the well water.
Or the wildlife.
Oh, wildlife, right? So we place our applications on public notice, and we certainly, the Department of Natural Resources, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service are on our list. They routinely get our notices, and they routinely provide comment to us. And one of the things that the applicant submitted is a U.S. Fish and Wildlife letter. So they already kind of looked in the databases and saw what was available as far as information goes, and then we didn't get any additional comment from the Fish and Wildlife Service that there were any threatened or endangered species within this permitted area, and similarly with the Department of Natural Resources. So there doesn't appear to be any threatened or endangered species. Wildlife in general, they can accommodate and adjust as needed when such activity is taking place. So I wouldn't anticipate any direct impact to wildlife in this scenario.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
And the well survey that you mentioned, is that something that we can make available on our webpage?
Sure, we can do that.
Okay. We'll be glad to put that up after tonight. And again, that's just a well survey for anyone with a private well that you can document the information on your well and send it in to us so that we have it on file. And it just kind of gives us some background information should there be a problem in the future, which we don't anticipate, but we would at least have that information on file. So please feel free, if you have a private well and you live in the immediate vicinity of the proposed mine, that you go online, download that form, fill it out, and send it back to us, and we will certainly make that a part of our file as well. So I think that is... Well, I do have a couple of more questions. But Laura, before I get to those, is there anyone else on the line who is calling in?
No, not at this time, Donna.
Okay. So Ms. Taylor has said that her well is 80 years old. That's amazing. And it was there long before you got there, so you don't have much knowledge about the depth or how shallow it is, but you do know where it is. So I would encourage you to take that form. If we need to put it in the mail to you, we'll be glad to do that as well. But just put as much information as you do know on that. And certainly if you live close to the proposed mine site, and whatever you have, we'll take. So I do understand that some of that information does get misplaced or lost or is unknown throughout the years. So we can appreciate that you may not have everything to include on that form.
And Donna, I'll just follow up on that and say, even if you don't know the information about the depth, and if you just know where the location is, more or less, like you can show us our house and your house and kind of pace off in which direction it is, that's even great information to have.
Thanks for adding that, Joe. That's exactly correct. So that's it for the questions. I will say Mr. Provenzano has posted a statement saying thank you for putting this meeting together and taking the comments and concerns of our town. It has certainly been our privilege to provide this opportunity to you, and I'm glad and so thankful to see that so many of you were able to access this meeting and listen in and have your questions answered. So I don't have anything else on the board. Laura, do you have Anybody who has indicated that they would like to comment?
No, not at this time.
Okay. I know it's a little after 8. We started right about 6:30, so I know that's a long time. I'm going to go ahead with my closing remarks, but if during my closing remarks you have a comment that you just thought of, please post it on the board. We'll check one more time, or indicate through your phone line that you would like to ask a question. So at this point, I would like to show slide 20 again and remind you of a few things before we close. DHEC will accept written comments on the proposed Pineland mine through August 7th of 2020. And as was committed earlier in this meeting, that date has been extended to August 10th, I believe it was, the following Monday. And certainly if you need more time than that, just reach out to Mason or Joe to let us know. Once the public comment period closes, DHEC will review and consider all comments received prior to making a final decision. Additional information may also be requested from the applicant. Once a final decision is made, a summary response to all written comments will be posted on our webpage and provided to everyone on our mailing list. You have the right to request a final review of any permit decision made by DHEC. The final review request must be submitted in writing to DHEC's clerk of the board, along with a filing fee in the amount of $100 within 15 days after notice of DHEC's permit decision has been mailed. In consideration of this requirement, you will receive notification of DHEC's permit decision by standard U.S. mail or by email. If you wish to be notified of DHEC's decision by certified mail instead, please make your request in writing no later than August 7th of 2020. Please let us know that you participated tonight by completing the registration form on our webpage. Completing this form will also let us know how to notify you of DHEC's final decision. The registration form will remain open through close of business tomorrow. Also, as Laura mentioned, there will be a link on our webpage, and actually I think it is already there, for a public meeting survey. We are interested in knowing your thoughts and suggestions about tonight's virtual meeting and how DHEC can improve the way we communicate and share information with you. Please take a moment to complete this survey within the next couple of days and share your feedback with us. Finally, if we did not have an answer to your question tonight, or if you are interested in discussing specific aspects of the proposed Pineland mine further, please reach out and connect with us by phone or email. We will be happy to talk with you more. Before I close, I would like to reiterate Joe's earlier comments that we really do appreciate your involvement, and especially the thoughtful comments that were given tonight. You gave us some good feedback, and we do appreciate you taking the time, and we know it takes time to put that together and to get it submitted to us, and then to also share it at a public forum like this, and we really do appreciate that. It's what the process is designed to do, so thank you. So before we close the meeting and say goodnight, Laura, do you have anyone else who has called in, who has raised their hand to ask a question?
Not at this time, Donna. Thank you.
I think we tired everyone out, but once again, on behalf of DHEC, I would like to thank you for your participation and patience this evening. Please protect yourself and others by following state guidelines to minimize the spread of COVID-19. Thank you again, and good night.